My brother showed up at my front door at 5:47 inches the morning with a locksmith and a storage unit key. Not to visit. Not to check on me, he came to move me out. I know because he told the locksmith and I heard every word through the door. My name is Maya, I'm 31 years old, I work night shifts as an ICU nurse, and 6 months ago I closed on a house I bought entirely with my own money. $312,000. 5 years of saving, 5 years of skipping vacations and driving a car with a cracked dashboard and eating lunch I packed from home. Every single dollar was mine. And on a Tuesday morning in October, while I was sleeping after a 12-hour shift, my brother Marcus decided that house belonged to him. Let me back up. I grew up the oldest of 3 in a family that never quite figured out how to be proud of someone without also wanting something from them. My parents are good people in a lot of ways. They go to church every Sunday. My mother brings food to neighbors when someone gets sick. My father coached Little League for 15 years. But there has always been underneath all of that this belief that what one person earns, the family is owed a share of. When I got my nursing license, my mother cried happy tears and then asked if I could start helping with my brother's car payments. When I paid off my student loans, my father sat me down and explained that Marcus was having a hard time and maybe I could float him a few months of rent. When I got promoted to charge nurse, my mother asked how much my raise was before she asked how I felt about it. I said yes for a long time. For years I said yes because I loved them and because it felt like the price of being loved back. Marcus is 28. He has never held a job for more than 14 months. He is charming in the way that people are charming when they have never had to develop any other skill. He can talk anyone into anything, or he thinks he can. He once convinced my parents that he needed $5,000 to start a pressure washing business. He bought a used PlayStation and a new jacket and told them the equipment had been stolen. They believed him. They always believe him. When I started seriously saving for a house, I stopped talking about money with my family entirely. I opened a separate account at a different bank. I didn't discuss it at dinners. When my mother asked how my finances were, I said fine and changed the subject. I had learned, slowly and painfully, that sharing good news in my family was the same as issuing an invoice. I found the house in February. It needed work. The kitchen was original to 1,987 and one of the bathroom tiles had a crack running through it, but the bones were good and the neighborhood was quiet and it was mine to fix on my own timeline. I closed in April. I did not tell my family until 2 weeks after I had the keys in my hand. My mother's first response was to ask how many bedrooms it had. I told her 3. She said, without pausing, that Marcus had been struggling with his apartment and this seemed like it was meant to be. I said that it wasn't meant to be. I said I needed my space, my home, my privacy. I said I had worked for 5 years for this specific thing, and I needed her to hear that it was not a resource for the family, it was my life. She said I was being selfish. She said family helps family. She said she didn't raise me to be like this. I had heard all of those sentences before. I let them wash over me and I held my ground. Over the following weeks, my father called twice to revisit the subject. Marcus texted me 11 times, ranging from casual, "Hey, when can I see the new place?" to pointed, "It's a 3-bedroom and you live alone." Seems wasteful to what I can only describe as emotional hostage-taking. I guess I know where I stand with you now. I didn't respond to most of them. I changed my alarm code after my mother asked what it was, and I couldn't think of a polite reason not to give it to her. I thought that was the end of it. I thought they would be unhappy for a while, and then adjust, and then life would go on. I was very wrong. What I didn't know and wouldn't find out until much later was that during those weeks, Marcus had been telling people the house was going to be shared. He told his friends. He told extended family members. He told our cousin Diane and our Aunt Patricia. He said his sister had bought a big house and he was going to be moving in and fixing it up and that we were going to split it 50-50. He had never spoken a single word of this to me. He had, however, been speaking to my parents. And my parents, whether because they believed him or because it was easier to go along than to push back or because they had decided I owed this to the family, had begun to treat his version of reality as the true one. I found out about the cousin and aunt pipeline in September, when my cousin Diane texted me to ask how the move-in was going and whether Marcus had settled in yet. I stared at my phone for a long time before I responded. I asked her what she was talking about. She told me Marcus had mentioned it back in May. She said he seemed excited. I called my mother that night. I was calm. I want to be clear about that. I was very calm because I have had years of practice at staying calm in situations that make me want to put my head through a wall. I asked her directly whether she had been telling people that Marcus was moving into my house. She said she had mentioned it to a few people because she thought it was a good solution for everyone. I asked her when I had agreed to this. She said she thought I would come around. I asked her to please stop telling people things that weren't true, and I asked her to please communicate to Marcus that this was not happening. She told me I needed to think about what mattered more to me, a house or my family. I said goodnight and I hung up. 2 weeks later, I changed my locks. I had a locksmith come on a Thursday afternoon while I was between shifts, and I had him replace both the front door lock and the side door lock, and I did not give anyone in my family a key. I told my neighbor Joanne, who is 64 and retired and the most reliably sensible person on my street, that I had changed my locks and that if anyone came by asking about me, she didn't need to tell them anything. Joanne raised an eyebrow and said she understood completely. I also, on the advice of a friend who had been through something similar, put a credit freeze on my accounts. I know that probably sounds like an extreme step for a situation involving my own family. I thought so too when my friend first suggested it. But then I thought about what Marcus had done with $5,000 that was meant for a business, and I thought about the fact that he had been telling people for months that he was moving into my house, and I decided that extreme steps were what the situation called for. I went to work. I took care of patients. I came home. I was careful about what I shared and with whom. I felt, cautiously, like I had protected myself. And then came the Tuesday morning in October. I had gotten home at 1:15 a.m., after a brutal 12-hour shift in which we had lost a patient, and I had held a grieving husband's hand for 40 minutes while he tried to understand what had happened. I had taken a shower and eaten half a sandwich and been asleep by 2 a.m. I was deep in the kind of sleep that only comes after that kind of night. My phone woke me at 5:44. I ignored it. It rang again at 5:46. I picked it up and saw it was my mother, and I set it back down, because I knew from the hour and the persistence that this was not a call I had the bandwidth for at 5:46 inches the morning. At 5:47 I heard voices outside my front door. I lay still for a moment, thinking it was neighbors. Then I heard my brother's voice, clear as anything, saying, "This one first, and then we'll deal with the side door." I was out of bed before I was fully awake. I went to my front window and looked out, and there was Marcus on my front porch, with a man I had never seen before who was carrying a toolbox, and behind them, standing at the edge of my front walk with her arms crossed like she was supervising a scheduled appointment, was my mother. I stood there in my socks and my scrub pants and a worn-out hospital t-shirt, and I looked at my brother trying to have my lock replaced at 5:47 inches the morning, and something in me went very quiet. I had spent years being angry in ways I tried to manage and moderate and keep proportional. In that moment, I was not angry. I was just absolutely certain about what was happening and what I needed to do. I went to my home office, and I opened the fireproof box where I keep my important documents, and I took out the deed to my house. I took out my mortgage paperwork. I took out the folder my realtor had given me at closing with every document I had signed. I carried all of it to the front door and I opened it. Marcus looked up. The locksmith looked up. My mother, at the end of the walk, looked up. My brother said, "Oh good, you're awake, we need to talk about the living arrangements." I said, "You're not changing my locks." He said, "We just came to talk." I said, "With a locksmith?" He said, "Look, this is a 3-bedroom house and you live alone, and the family has decided." I said, "The family doesn't decide what happens to my house. I decide. My name is on this deed. My name is on this mortgage. My money paid for this." My mother walked up the path. She said, "Maya, we are your family." I said, "I know that, and my family is standing on my porch at 5:47 inches the morning with a locksmith after I specifically told you that Marcus was not moving in here. I need you both to hear me very clearly. This is trespassing. What you are attempting to do is criminal. If you touch my locks, I will call the police." Marcus said, "You're being dramatic." I held up the deed. I said, "This is my property. This document has my name on it. There is no other name on it. You have no legal right to be here, and no legal right to change anything about this house." My mother said, "You don't have to make this into something legal." I said, "You brought a locksmith. You made it something legal." There was a long silence. The locksmith, to his credit, was staring at his shoes like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. Marcus said, "You're going to regret this." I said, "I'm asking you to leave. If you're not gone in 5 minutes, I'm calling 911. My mother said my name, in the tone she has always used when she wants me to understand that I am disappointing her. I said, "I love you. Please leave." They left. I stood at my front door until the car was gone from the street, and then I went inside and sat down on my kitchen floor and shook for about 10 minutes. Not from fear, from the particular adrenaline of having held a line that has cost you something to hold. Then I got up and I called 2 people. The first was my best friend Renee, who answered on the 3rd ring in a sleepy voice and listened to the entire story and then said, with great clarity, "You need a lawyer and a paper trail, today." The second was my neighbor Joanne, who I asked to write down what she had seen from her window that morning. Joanne had been up early. Joanne had seen everything. Joanne wrote it down in her tidy retired schoolteacher handwriting and signed it and dated it and gave it to me by 9 a.m. I called a real estate attorney that morning. She was calm and businesslike and told me that what I had described an attempt to change the locks on a property someone else owns was indeed criminal in my state and that I had several options. She recommended a cease and desist letter as a first step, which she could send within 24 hours, and she advised me to document every contact attempt going forward. The cease and desist went out the next morning to my brother and my parents both. My mother called me 11 times in the 48 hours after receiving it. I did not answer. She left 3 voicemails in which she went through several stages, from shocked to hurt to what I can only describe as revisionist, in which the version of events she described sounded like a wellness check on a beloved family member rather than an attempt to break into a home at 6 inches the morning. In the 3rd voicemail, she said, "I don't know who has been filling your head with ideas." I saved all 3 voicemails. My father called once. He sounded tired and sad, and he said, "I hope you know we only want what's best for you." I wrote down the time and date of the call and did not respond. Marcus did not call, Marcus texted. The text started aggressive and became, over the course of several days, increasingly strange. He appeared to genuinely believe that his having told people about the arrangement made it real, that the social reality he had constructed was as valid as the legal one. He texted me, "You already promised this to the family." I had never said a single word that could be interpreted as a promise. I showed the texts to my attorney. She added them to the file. What happened over the following 3 weeks was not dramatic. It was bureaucratic, and in its own way that was more satisfying than anything dramatic could have been. My attorney sent a second letter after Marcus showed up unannounced at my workplace, not inside, but in the parking lot, where he waited for 40 minutes until my shift ended and then tried to talk to me about coming to a family agreement. I documented it. We added The locksmith, it turned out, had not known the full situation when Marcus hired him. When he was contacted as part of the process, he said he had understood it to be a family property dispute and had gotten uncomfortable the moment I appeared at the door. He cooperated fully. My cousin Diane called me, not Marcus, me about 3 weeks into this. She said she felt terrible that she had passed along information without knowing what she was passing along. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was okay. She said, "I always thought it was weird that he was so certain about it." I filed that away too. I am not going to tell you that this ended in a way that felt like victory, because that is not quite the right word for it. The restraining order meant that Marcus could not contact me. My parents, facing the reality of legal documents and an attorney who copied them on everything, eventually went quiet. Nobody apologized. Nobody said they had been wrong. My mother sent a card at Christmas with a short note that said she missed me and hoped I was well. I read it once and put it in a drawer. What I have now is a house that is mine. I come home from 12-hour shifts and I unlock my own front door and I walk into my own kitchen and I make my own tea and I sit in my own quiet and I do not owe any of it to anyone. I put a security camera on the front porch in November. I know my credit score because I check it every month. I have a real estate attorney whose number is in my phone. I have a neighbor who signs things when I need a witness. I have learned some things that I want to say clearly because I hear from people who are in versions of this situation all the time. Changing your locks is not a betrayal. Protecting your legal documents is not paranoia. Saying no to someone who loves you is not the same as saying you don't love them back. The fact that someone is your blood does not give them a claim on what you have built. Forgiveness, I have come to believe, is something you can offer from a distance. It does not require proximity. It does not require giving people access to your life so that they can hurt you with it again. My brother thought my love for my family was a door he could walk through whenever he wanted. It took me a long time to understand that a door you own is a door you get to lock. I locked mine, and they froze when they realized I'd had the paperwork to prove it the whole time.